Hi, I'm Brian, and I've attached a Tarot 2D gimbal to my DJI Phantom Quadcopter. I've got a couple different camera angles to help try to help everybody figure out how do you adjust this, what do the settings you adjust affect, and how they affect the gimbal. It took me a long time to figure this out, so I hope I can share some of this knowledge with you guys and save you guys a lot of time and heartache. Okay, you can kind of tell here the way I've got this set up. Here's the front of my DJI Phantom right here. This is going to be the left side, this is going to be the right side, or driver side, passenger side, because I like cars. Easy for me to remember. That's important because there's two different ways to connect to the Tarot here. There's a connection on the left side or the driver's side. Right over here, you'll see on this other camera, it's right there. And then on the other side, there's another connector just like that on the passenger side or on the right side. There's another connector that controls the motor power and that kind of thing. So, very first thing that totally messed me up when I was trying to get this going, and it kept on messing up how the rotating would work. It kept shaking. You'll see on the front camera here. Let me rotate this so you get the back of the GoPro. I'm going to turn on my light just because we're going to need it for this part. If you see right in here, I'm pointing to it right there. There's a little screw right there. Tighten that screw down. On mine, that wasn't tightened down all the way. Actually, let me make that camera a little bigger for everybody. There we go. You see the little screw hole it's kind of in the shadow. See it right there, right underneath the wire. Right there. That screw wasn't tightened down all the way on mine. I didn't realize I needed to have it tightened all the way down, and it was really throwing me for a loop because it kept on shifting, and the GoPro kept changing it. It would throw the whole thing out of whack and start shaking all over the place. I finally figured out, tightened that sucker down, and that solved a ton of problems. If you have that problem, tighten it down. You're great. If you never had to tighten that down, or you already did, you're already 5 steps ahead of me. Now, let's go to the desktop here. This is the software that you download from Tarot's website. I'll include a link on where that is in the description below. First thing you got to do now is connect the USB that came with your Tarot into your computer and then plug it in onto the side here. So let me take you to the side shot. Like I said, the side plug is that I think it's a 4-wire. Yeah, there's a 4-wire plug there. So let me plug it in. Okay, and it's going to go right there. Now on mine, these plugs are they're really weak. So you don't want to push too hard, but you want to make sure that that gets in there nice and solid. So you see there's the wire there, plugged in and connected. Now I'm going to plug in the power of my Phantom right here. And then back here on this chair I've got my controller, and I'll turn that on. You'll notice that I've got the USB right here plugged into the Phantom. That's really not needed. The only reason I have it plugged in is because the LED on the back is dimmed and it doesn't flash all the time. If that's plugged into the computer, it doesn't go crazy and flashing. If it's unplugged, it starts flashing and it's really distracting, so I just plug it in. But we're not going to need that. Back to the desktop app. We now have to, first thing you do is open up the COM port. If you're not sure what COM port it is, just start trying them. COM 1, open COM port. It says COM port opened successfully, but it's lying to you. The main way you can tell, let's see if I can get this in the shot here. Nope, I'm going to move this camera right here. This is the USB. This is the USB dongle that came with your Tarot. As soon as you get it to connect to the right port, it starts blinking blue. So let me now try COM 3, open COM port. See, there's no blue light. Now if I go to COM 5, which I know is it, you click it, see that blue light starts blinking? This software is not the best written software you ever did see, and it can be a pain in the butt sometimes. So that's how you can tell if you got it right, your thing starts blinking. Okay, now let's go down and click the open COM port. Now you see it connected. You'll notice all these numbers are populated, but also down here we've got these numbers are slightly changing. That's because it is updating. Over here it says all parameters updated. So we know we're good. If you notice, it automatically starts off with the motor off. So I can go over here, you'll see on the other cameras, I can move it, jiggle it. The numbers update, you'll see on underneath that screen there, the numbers update, but the motor's not on. Now if I want to turn on the motor, just come over here, click the motor on, obviously, and it turns on and does its thing. Let's first talk about how do we adjust it. I found when I was trying to dial this in for my setup, it was good to start off with some parameters that were working for a lot of other people. So I would suggest first, let's adjust the motor. Actually, even before first, I would highly recommend doing this. Set your gains right now. While you've got it all plugged in, you got it turned on, set your gains. What this will do is these are just a good launching point to figure out how do we tweak everything and get everything just right. By setting these gains, it's going to be easier to go into the motor and set the motor, and we know that these gains are relatively good. So you set all those gains, you type them in, you hit enter, and then make sure you click the right settings to flash. Now the reason why we do that, and I'm going to kind of harp on this on a couple times during this video because I messed up on it so many times. You notice when you're setting these gains, it instantly takes to the gimbal. However, it doesn't save it for the next time you turn the gimbal on. By writing these changes to the flash, make sure that every time you unplug and plug in that gimbal, it will save these settings. Okay, that said, let's go and click on the motor configuration. Now we've got that window up. Let's go to the side view here. Now you'll see we've got the cable right here plugged in. Now this is the driver's side, like I like to say it, the left side of the gimbal. That's how we control the gains for the gimbal. Now we want to control the motors, so we actually have to unplug this and bring it around to the other side. So the passenger side of the gimbal is where you control the motor settings. There's another plug that looks just like it, another 4-plug prong wire. Just plug it in. And then we connect to it the same way with the software. So if we go back over to the software, you click Open COM port. Now, it's not connecting because I missed one vital step. I've got to turn the dumb thing on. So then we plug in the quadcopter here. And it doesn't take long for this thing to find that it's working. In fact, it already connected. As soon as I click the Open COM port, you see right here it's saying the current, the voltage. Here's the power settings that I have set up. Over here, I believe I just left that to the rolling motor. I just left that on default because I didn't have any reason to change it. The roll has always worked well for me. I don't know if that's true for you, but it has for me. And the settings we're going over on the tilt will work just fine for the rolling if you've got problems. This is the number I've picked for mine, which is it's 40. Now, the reason why I picked 40, it's higher than some other people have mentioned in their settings. What the power is another way you can talk about it is torque. It's the power you're giving the motor, or telling the motor to use, to overcome resistance. So let's go over here to, let's look at the front of the camera. Right now, is this thing on? Yep, it's on. I feel for how much shake it's got. It's doing pretty good. Now, when it goes to roll forward, the amount of resistance it's going to encounter varies on your own setup. For me, I've got this extra Velcro thing here, and I've got this FPV wire. All that is slightly tugging on the cables. A lot of people use 20 on their setup when they don't have this stuff. Now, let me show you what happens when we set this number to 20. I keep clicking in the wrong spot. Set this number to 20. Hit enter to apply those. Now watch over there that camera. As I go to tilt it down, look what it will do. See that? It starts to skip around. That's because it doesn't have enough power to push past the resistance that all this extra stuff is giving it. So let me tilt it back up. You can really feel this. Oh, it's not even going to tilt back up, I think. I'm going to have to bump up the power. You can really feel this with your fingers when you're touching it. Let me bump it up to 30. There we go. So if I put my finger right here and I try to tilt that forward and I kind of try to stop it, see it kind of pushing back a little bit and jerking back and forth, that's because it's coming up against that 30 number and it won't push past that. So let me tilt it back up. So then I was thinking, well, why don't I just bump this all the way up to 100? It's max power. That way it never will have a problem. I found when I did that, and I come under here and I touch this, I get a really high-pitched shake. It's just brrrr. And you can see it on the video. The video just looks a little blurry, is the best way I could do it. So I realized that it's because my power is set way too high. Now, when you put your finger right here and I go to try to stop it and roll it down, look at that. It's a totally different feel. It pushes really hard to allow it to happen. So I started playing. All right, obviously 20 didn't work. What about 25? Would 25 work? Coming back up, watching it. What I found, I was like, oh yeah, 25 is working. This is great. Well, when I actually get out there and we got wind coming around and this quadcopter's bouncing all over the place, 25 wasn't cutting it. And not even 30 was cutting it. So I found a good all-around number to be 40. 40 seemed to hold it pretty well, even in the windy conditions, even when I'm trying to tilt it down, tilt it up, fly, all sorts of craziness. It was working really well and was keeping it pretty solid. Now you can see I keep touching this and trying to feel for vibration. On these lower numbers, the vibration is very nice and it gives you very clean footage. So I like to do 40. Now once again, I'm going to harp on this a few times. When you're doing your numbers in here, it automatically applies it as soon as you hit enter, sends it to the gimbal. But it does not save it. Can't tell you how many times I get excited, dialed in, unplug it, go out in the field, and it's crazy again. That's because I did not go down here and say right settings to flash. Another cool feature with this software is you can save these numbers to a file and then load them back. Great example of using this is if you feel like you've got it dialed in but you want to kind of explore more, you can change the settings, save them, and if it doesn't work, just load the configuration. So go over here. This is one I set a while ago. Open, and it reverts those numbers. I'll show you. I'm going to go to 10. Load configuration. Load that motor configuration. Jumped it back to 40. And even when you load the configuration, you have to write those settings to flash for it to take properly. And that's how you do the motor. It's a good place to start. Go for the smallest number you can so you get the smoothest video. Now, after we got the motor configured, let's play with the gain settings. And of course, we might have to go back to the motor and adjust as we try to fine-tune everything. With these gain settings, the manual actually suggests that we start at like 100 and work our way around. Let's start here and try to work our way from there. So let's turn the motor on. Now, I'm going to go to, let's look at the front here. You'll see I like to put my finger on it and feel what kind of vibration we're getting. Right now, since I got my settings dialed in, the vibration's pretty good. One of the reasons I think that my settings are a little different than a lot of other people's settings that I've been finding on forums is because I've got a couple extra things going on here. I've got this little extra holder. I really don't like the screw on, screw off your GoPro every time you want to access it and get your memory card. I also use my GoPro for other things, so I got this cool one that has a Velcro strap, easy on, easy off. Over here, you'll see this cable coming out the side of my GoPro. That's for my FPV. I think that also adds just to the extra weight and resistance of this thing turning on its own. All those things put together, my values weren't working quite as the same as someone else's. So back to the desktop. Let's adjust these gain values. Let's just start here, and I'll start with like 100 to get a working understanding of this. Hit enter. Now I go over here and I feel this again. I can feel it moving a little bit more. I don't think you can actually see it on the camera, but I can feel it moving a little bit more. It's okay. Now let's adjust this gain setting. Let's say 50. Hit enter. All right. Oops. Okay, I'm touching it. Still feels pretty good. Now I'm going to go over here to my controller, and I'm going to have it tilt down. Let's watch it tilt down and see what it does. Looks pretty smooth. Have it tilt up. Looks pretty smooth. So that's looking pretty good. I personally like to go as low gain settings as possible. Now, that might be a noob thing because I don't truly understand what the gains are doing here, but that's what I do. So if that's still working, let me go over here. Let's get to a spot where it's not working. 50, 50. All right, let's pan down again and see if this camera does anything funny for us. Nope, still going pretty smooth. I'm gonna put my finger on it and just feel it. It feels pretty smooth. I'm feeling a little more shaky. All right, let's up it again. Let's go all the way up to 100. Let's see what happens when I do 100. Let's pan down again. Okay, you see that right there, how it's kind of freaking out? Let me go to a big picture of the front here. Okay, let me pan back up. It looks like we're not even going to be able to get the pan back up. In this case where it gets stuck, I like to quickly go over here, turn the motor off. And click the motor off button. Okay. So we know, bad idea. Let's not do 100. Let's drop that down to 80. Okay, turn the motor back on. That's looking good. Let's pan down again. That looks pretty good. Let me put my finger on it, just kind of get a feel. That's feeling pretty smooth. Let's jump these all up to 80. Or not 500. 80, 80. Okay, now let's pan down. All right, and pan back up. That's feeling pretty smooth. Now what I like to do is kind of, let's tilt this forward. Let's tilt it back. Looks like it's keeping form pretty good there. So now, like I said, I like to drop it lower. So let's go ahead and drop it down to like, let's go, I started at 1. What does it do at 1? Now this is something I don't think you can really see that, but it is shaking really good. Let me make that front cam pretty big. It's gonna look blurry, but that's it actually shaking. Let me go to the side cam and see if you can see it moving back and forth really a lot, if that's even a word. Just going back and forth. Obviously that gain is off. Let's jump it up by 10. Nope, still seeing a lot of movement. Let's go to 20. Oh, that seemed to level out a bit. I'm gonna put my finger underneath it. Still feel a little shaking. All right, so let's do one down here. Look at it drifting like that. It's actually not much shaking, but it is just constantly moving. So I'm going to change that to 20. That looks a little better, doesn't it? All right, now let's go hit this guy and let's do 1. Ooh, that's going nuts. That's going crazy. You look at the front shot there. All right, let's quickly change that to 20. That seems to have gotten a little better. I still feel it shaking a bit, so let's bring it up to 25. Oops, I got a period in there. Let's do 25. Go over here and touch it. Still feeling a little bit of shakiness. All right, let's bump that up to 30. Now, here's something to note. Right now, it just turned the motors off. I don't know why it turned the motor off. Usually when it turns the motor off, you'll see on this side shot here, that light turns red because it turned them off to protect something from being damaged. This time it turned them off. I don't know. This software is a little hokey pokey. Let me turn it back on. Camera's not freaking out. I'm going to touch it again. Feels okay. All right, let me jump this guy up to 30. Now I'm feeling a bit more movement, so let me come down on this guy. Let's do 25. That just feels a little better, okay? Now let me hit this one, and let's do 25 on this one. Yeah, feeling a little bit of movement. Let's see if I go up to 30. Yeah, that actually feels like it might be a little better. As you can tell, it takes a lot of little play here, play there. Let me figure out what it's going to do. And that kind of stuff. Other settings to note. I actually have not really played with the roll settings. My camera always seems to roll right and left really well. So I left those. Those seem fine. These are your angle limits. This is going to be how far will it tilt on roll, how far will it roll right and roll left. Now this angle limit, this is my own personal preferences. I want my camera to never go higher than looking straight ahead or lower than looking straight down. Straight ahead, that's going to be 0 degrees. So if we look on, let me give you your side shot here. This is 0 degrees. See right there, going back and forth. Now, negative 90, which is my other one, means it's going to tilt itself, get my down like that. That's negative 90. So you can kind of get an idea, little geometry lessons there for you, what the angles would be. So if you wanted to look straight up into the belly of the Phantom, it would be positive 90, I believe. I'll show you. Okay, angle limit. You gonna let me click it? No, it's not, because I'm moving the wrong thing. All right. So let's say 90 is my max. Now, you'll see it just looks up into the belly of the aircraft, which means my little stick on my controller controls it from going all the way to 90 to negative 90. And if I want it to look straight ahead, the stick would be somewhere in the middle. Now, I have no reason to ever want to look up into the bottom of the Phantom, so I set mine to 0. Now, if you like to look farther than straight down, you could go negative, I don't know what the limit is. Let's try 180. Okay, it's 135, obviously, because it just typed that in for me. So if I go down, I'm not sure if my cables are actually long enough to twist all the way around, but it looks like we can actually look a little ways behind us. That's me. Yeah, my cables aren't long enough, so we're not going to try. So negative 90 is going to be your straight down. RC sensitivity, I'm not sure what this does. I have it set to 50 per what other people have talked about. Over here, they suggested for the roll settings to do the motor reverse. I know it works for me, and I'm happy. I don't know if you need to do it or not either, but I do it. Now, this is something that took me quite a while to figure out and fix. This is the stick rate mode or the stick position mode. Now, for someone who's new like me, that meant very little, and I had no idea what was going on there. Here's kind of an explanation on that for everyone else. I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way and put my controller on here. Now, this is just your standard DJI Phantom controller. However, I did add a screen here for my FPV, so just ignore that. For your stick position mode, actually, let's talk stick rate mode. For stick rate mode, that's like this guy. As if the stick that you're controlling is one of these, where you push it up, and then you let go, and it snaps back to 0. So you want it to move, 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 stop moving. Go down, 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 stop going down. So if you had a controller like this to control your camera, that's when you'd want the stick rate mode. Now, if you don't, and you have more of a knob, that would be stick position mode. And let me show you on the back of my Phantom here. This is DJI's own little thing. I bought it off eBay for 10 bucks. So if I want the camera to be right there, and it moves just that much, that's what the stick position mode is. The position of your stick is the position of the camera. Now that I know what the heck that means, it totally makes sense. And for a lot of you, it might already make sense. For me and any other noob who has no idea what they're doing, this might be a huge, huge help. Now back to the quadcopter. One last thing to remember while you're adjusting all this. So right now it feels like we've got our settings pretty down. The quadcopter's feeling really good. So you just close the program or you just turn it off. Do not do that. What you want to do is you want to write the settings to flash. And I can tell you how many times I've done this. I've got it all dialed in. I push enter. It's acting great. Turn it off. Go outside. Turn it back on. And it goes crazy again. That's because I did not write the settings to flash. All these numbers are not saved on next boot up. They're just temporarily saved. We have to write those settings to flash. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it. And I haven't written those settings to flash. Okay, power's off. Now I'm going to plug it back in. Notice when this thing comes back up, it's going to restore my old settings I had in here when I started the video. There it goes. 80, 38, 28, and 42. All those settings are restored back on. Remember, the motor starts as off. I'm going to turn the motor on, and you should see it come back to life. Let me adjust my gimbal. There we go. And tilt it all the way down to -90. And that's it. So hopefully this video helps you figure out how to adjust this gimbal and get it going. I can tell you once again, the problem that really plagued me a lot more than I realized was that screw. This piece down here that's holding the GoPro was loose, and it was wreaking all sorts of havoc on my setup. If you have any questions, of course, leave your comments. I'll get to them best I can. I do have a life and a family and a job, so I'm not on all the time. Bear with me if I don't answer very often or very soon. Thanks a lot.